Here's everything you need to know about the Lore Master class in Lotro. Before we get into it though, I just want to say, make sure you check out the Patreon, which is linked down below. I do post these videos up early, so then that way you can kind of see them before anyone else. So if you want to join the Patreon club over there, let's get weird in Patreon. Anyway, Lore Masters are definitely kind of like a Gandalf-y kind of class. The reason why I say that is because they have staffs. They look very similar to Gandalf and Radagast and, you know, a lot of the wizards. But when it comes down to it, the Lore Master class was actually inspired by Elrond, you know, because he does love lore and, you know, get it, Lore Master, like that's pretty much Elrond. But I always kind of relate their look, or I guess like their class abilities, more to like Gandalf. They definitely utilize like elements within like the earth, like fire and even wind, for instance, and lightning to do a lot of damage. And I definitely would equate that more to like a wizard type of class or skill-based abilities from what we see in Lord of the Rings in terms of like what we can read from the books or even see in the movies. So that's where I personally go, but this class, according to Lotro, was specifically garnered, or I guess inspired by Elrond. It says here on the Lotro wiki that lore masters use ancient lore and elemental powers to inflict damage on their enemies while controlling and debuffing them. But while some lore masters rely on summon pets, Red lives on the edge. Without protection, they have to stun, slow, and create distance and landscape. While debuffing, buffing, and crowd control are primary roles, healing support is a secondary role of lore masters. Flanking maneuvers allowed them to apply additional damage or healing. Going off of the lore masters are seekers of knowledge and guardians of wisdom. Though study of bygone ages, they learn ancient secrets that allow them to hinder their foes, as well as protect them against the dark powers of the enemy. They have many skills that invoke the natural world of Middle-earth, but it is draining on their will, thus costing them morale to fuel some of their powerful skills. I don't really want that to alarm people. There are a few skills with lore masters that does cost a little bit of morale, but it's nothing like take half of your health to utilize this skill. Normally it's like probably less than 5% most of the time. I think there's one skill that's like 30%, but it's a res, I'm pretty sure. So in a way, it kind of makes sense. You're like healing someone else by giving them your morale, you know? Anyway, lore masters are definitely, think of like a major sage kind of class that was mentioned, but they are inspired by Elrond. That's just who they kind of modeled the class based off of. Like was mentioned as well, they are mainly a support-based class in terms of rating. That's mostly what people use lore masters for, but I won't lie, now that the rework has happened, the Lore Master has probably the most damage of any of the classes right now in Lotro. I don't have evidence to prove that. I'm just going based off of my own intuition on that and just my own, like, you know, knowledge of what I know. But I would say they have one of the higher DPS rankings. So now I feel like Lore Masters are definitely utilized in more of a damage role for raids, and they are labeled as a moderate class, which I would kind of agree. They used to be advanced, but now they're under moderate. But I think with the rework, that definitely took a lot of like the advanced skills out of it. So I definitely recommend this class if you want something that's not super basic and easy to learn, but also you want to kind of get like more in the fold and understand how the skills work. With Lore Master, I will say that a lot of their skills are intertwined, so definitely read how certain skills can affect the other. It's not going to be that like intuitive, I guess, or it's not going to be like that obvious. But when you hover over your skills and read the skills, you can see like how some of your fire-based skills, if you utilize them with others, it could actually give you more damage and just allow you to have a better overall experience when it comes to the combat. Lore Masters are, I would say, limiting when it comes down to which races can play them. So you can play them if you're an elf, a high elf, a hobbit, a man, or a river hobbit, which actually it used to be way more like limiting, but lore masters definitely can't be played with dwarfs just yet, unfortunately, but we still have a few options. If you were to ask me which race is probably going to have the best bonuses or boost when it comes down to playing a lore master, I would definitely say a high elf is definitely a great choice, just because I know that they do have an initial decrease in will, but later with one of your racial traits, you'll actually be able to earn the ability to have more will, which will actually progress with your level. So you could have up to a certain amount of a bonus on will that could be up to 1,000 plus points at the max level for will, which is more than what the other races would get. And will is going to be a very critical thing or important thing that you'll need for your lore master, which I'll get into in a bit. But you'll definitely want to probably gear towards a high elf just for that. There are other traits that help with a high elf as well, but I would just recommend a high elf for sure. But play whatever race. It really doesn't honestly matter too much in Lotro if you ask me. I've just played whatever I thought looked cool. But if you want like the max amount of like stat bonuses you could get, then I mean high elf's probably your best bet. For lore masters, they are a squishier class because they can only have light armor as the only armor that they are allowed to utilize. But don't worry, because your damage is like one of the best in the game, so I think it kind of evens out for you. In comparison to like their weapons that they can wield, it's really only staves that they are able to wield. But later in the game, you will earn the ability to wield a sword and a staff combo, but that is later in the game, around level 40 or so, if I'm not mistaken, late 40s. So I've just logged on my lore master, and I just want to give you a quick run through of the class trait trees. So you can choose to specialize in the Keeper of Animals, which is a strong bond with beasts for attack and defense. This is a class that allows you to have animals or pets, which used to be across all of the class trait trees, but they have since changed that. So if you do want to keep your pets, have bears and bog lurkers and just a lot of cool like animals that you can kind of utilize to help you in battle, then blue line is definitely geared towards that. Red line is called Master of Nature's Fury. It uses strength of nature to damage foes. Think of this like your big DPS tier to really focus on. I would say that the red line lore master is probably one of the highest DPS classes so far in the game after their rework as of right now, but it is super cool and good for soloing. Blue line is great for soloing. Yellow line is fine for soloing as well, but yellow line is mostly utilized for raiding. Yellow line is the Ancient Master line. It uses lore knowledge to hinder and confuse foes. This is where a lot of your crowd control comes in. Get a lot of dazes from this and stuns, so I would definitely utilize this more so for raiding if you are going down more a support based role with raiding, and if you're going more of a DPS based role with raiding, you would go red, but you can play either of these soloing and you'll be totally fine. And then I just want to show you my virtues and which virtues I would recommend you kind of work towards or look towards for your lore master. So real quickly, let me pull up my character sheet for you. Lore masters, like I mentioned, will is super important for them. Will increases your tactical mastery, critical rating. Critical rating is so critical, I would say, for lore masters. Physical mitigation, tactical mitigation, which means that you will do less damage, like you'll have less damage taken to you with the mitigations. Resistance and evasion. Resistance being you're resisting like, certain like poisons or wounds and that sort of thing. And then evasion, obviously you're evading attacks. So very good for making sure you're not taking any direct damage, which is good because you're a light armor class, but also it still has that increase for you with the tactical mastery that your damage is still good, and your critical rating is important because that means you're going to get like the best peak on those skills. Potentially you'll have a better chance of getting the best DPS peaks off on your skills. Something else I would definitely recommend while we talked about critical rating and that being important, definitely do not lack on finesse. This is super critical as well for lore masters, probably not as much as tactical mastery or even will is, but it's still something to note that this reduces your opponent's resistance to your damage attack. So like if they try to block or parry or evade, finesse will change that, and hopefully if you get it up high enough, that'll give you more of a chance of that not happening if they have a stat that's sort of similar. So keep that in mind for sure. And yeah, I would also recommend Fatality. Fatality is also a really good stat that just increases your morale in general, and especially with being a light armored class, I would not slack on Fatality. So just to give a general recap, Tactical Mastery, that increases the damage that you deal with your tactical attacks, which most of your attacks are tactical in this case with the Lore Master, if not all. And then definitely Critical Rating, which that is labeled as increases the critical hit chance and magnitude of your range, melee, and tactical attacks, which is exactly what you'd like. Finesse, which is just if your opponents try to resist or evade or block, if you have more finesse, then they're less likely to do that. Tactical Mastery will crit, Fatality, and then Finesse is kind of what I go for in terms of what stats to really prioritize in order. But I'll show you what I've utilized. For your virtues, I would definitely recommend going with Wit, because that has Finesse, Crit, and Physical Tactical Mastery as well, which is great for you. So Wit is a good choice. Wisdom is also great. You get Will, Tactical Mastery, and Finesse. Great choices as well. Honesty is also another one I would highly recommend you utilize as a Lore Master. That gives you Tactical Mastery, Will, and Crit. Doesn't give you too much Will, but that Tactical Mastery definitely needed. And look at your passive bonuses too. I mean, I have a passive bonus of even more Tactical Mastery with Honesty, so keep that in mind too. I went with Loyalty because that has Fatality and a little bit of armor rating and incoming healing rating, which can be nice. You don't have to go with Loyalty if you don't want to. I always go for it with my characters because it just gives that little extra morale boost, so more health. That is kind of up to you. In this case too, you're probably looking at me like, why in the heck did you go with Idealism, Aubrey? Fate refers to your power. Power, not so big of like a stat you really need to focus on. A lot of the time, power is not really an issue in Lotro anymore. It used to be. I understand, and then it's pretty much just morale. I kind of wanted more morale for this character because I went with a blue line. So my pets do most of the tanking and I'm just supporting my pets. That's kind of just the roles I've played with my Lore Master. So I just wanted more health in general, especially because I'm on Angmar, and Angmar has the freaking bloody Nazgul and Wraiths that pop up randomly. So yeah, I needed some more morale for my sake. But if you would like another suggestion on your 5th trait, I would definitely recommend Confidence for sure, hands down, because you have the Crit, Finesse, and Evasion rating, which would be great for you. So if I had to, say for your virtues, I would definitely go with like Wit, Wisdom, Honesty is your top 3 for sure. And then the other 2, you can kind of like go between a few different things. But Confidence, I would highly suggest you utilize Confidence. And you can do Loyalty if you want. There's nothing wrong with it. But feel free to kind of spice up the last one if you like. Those are just my general virtues and why I'm using them. And what I would personally say, just from my years of playing the game, what I would kind of utilize or say for other players to utilize for their virtues. And just real quickly too, to just wrap up a few other questions you might have. No, Lore Masters will not, nor probably will they ever, have the ability to wield shields, unfortunately. And the big highlight I would say from Lore Masters is that they do get to utilize pets or companions. That is only special to Lore Masters and Captains as of right now. And if I'm being honest, Captains really don't need them. I don't really like the companions for Captains because it's like they're just people, they're shield maidens and stuff like that help you out, and they don't really do too much. But for Lore Masters, it's kind of cool. It goes more into like the lore aspect of the class. It's more like pets and animals and stuff like that, so it can be really neat. So that's definitely something to highlight, even though it is limited to only 2 lines now instead of all 3, which is unfortunate, but it's cool to, play Lore Master. They're definitely probably a little bit more of like a squishier class, I would say, in terms of the hits that they take, because when you get hit hard as a Lore Master if you're not, utilizing your stats. But I will swear to you, they get so powerful so quickly. I definitely feel like they get a little bit more well-rounded around like level 20-25. So play it up to that point, and then if you feel like you're still like really squishy, and you've kind of looked at other guides and, you know, learn the game some more, I would definitely just, you know, maybe try a different class then if you feel like it's not a right fit for you. But around like level 20-25, that's kind of where I feel like, yes, my lore master is finally getting powerful. So keep that in mind for sure. But that is all, weirdos. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if you have any comments down below. Until then, make sure you check out some of the other class guides I have for you. And as always, I hope you stay weird, you weird weirdos.